Well, hello, everyone. We lost all sorts of track of time backstage. We're having such a great time meeting our new guests that you're going to get to meet here in just a minute. It is 2 p.m. on a Friday afternoon if you're joining us live, which means it's time for another kick-ass career conversation. I'm Kim.
I'm Louise.
And we're joined today by
Donna. Hi, how are you?
Hi, Donna. We are good. Louise, we just lost your face.
I know. My camera just got unplugged.
Okay.
Carry on.
Well, okay, we will carry on. Well, I mean, we didn't lose your face. We just can't see it. So that we talked about frogs and what happened to them last week. We don't need to do more scary things. So we are here to talk with Donna in just a little bit about magical frameworks, and we're going to leave that to your imagination for just a minute. I'd love to know, just like we start every week, what are we celebrating? Donna, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. I will tell you what I'd love to celebrate today, and that's friendship. And I'll tell you why, because I am not a great friend. I'm not a great friend, and I'm not denigrating myself. Anyone who knows me would probably agree with me. And yet somehow I have amazing friends. And I just would like to celebrate the fact that especially three, Cindy, Russell, and Jordi, I'm calling you out. They are so faithful and so generous. And so I just feel I need to celebrate friendship. And I'm becoming a better friend because of them.
Aww.
I just felt that in all the places. Oh, love that. Louise, what are you celebrating?
I'm celebrating me this week, and really diving into focusing on the things that move me forward. A lot of times, I think, especially this time of year, there's a lot of noise and distractions, and so just kind of focusing without feeling overwhelmed, without feeling like I have to get all of the things done immediately. When I looked back, I took some time this morning to look back on my week. And I was like, hey, I did a lot of things this week, and I'm feeling energized and connected today because I was able to kind of drown out that noise and not take too much on my plate. And focus on those important things. So, it's tough this time of year sometimes to do that when all of those things are going on. So I would like to give myself a little pat on the back today for focusing and moving the needle. That's where I'm at today.
Nice job. It sounds like you're taking your sign that sits behind you that says the obstacle is the way to heart right now. It's like, oh, focus is sometimes the obstacle. It's hard to find that time to focus.
Yeah. And it just has big rewards. I think we forget because we were thinking of, I think of all the things that fall off the plate, right? Not the things that get accomplished, but that's why we celebrate. That's why we take this time every week, is to focus on those things that are working well, so that we can remember that we've shown up for ourselves and our friends in that way. Kim, how about you? What are you celebrating today?
Ooh, it has been a week. It has been a week. And I say that from both ends of the spectrum. Last week, I was celebrating the slowness that I stepped into the day. And it was interesting because today was also a slow morning, but in a very different way. A lot of sleep issues this week. So not celebrating the sleep issues. I'm celebrating that during the days, though, they have been filled with so much juicy and yummy stuff that it has kept me from feeling the fatigue, from feeling the brain fog, from feeling all those things we normally feel when our sleep gets thrown off. Thanks, perimenopause. Right? It's real. It's here. And having the ability to be fully invested in what's happening. And it's been from amazing conversations. I led a really gorgeous visioning session to help people kind of step into what their big dreams are for 2024. But I'm also celebrating a lot of technology. There's been a lot of wins around technology this week, even though we are already in the shadow of next week's Mercury retrograde, and I'm feeling it in terms of things blowing up. It still was really like, there was a lot of wins. It was like, ooh, look what this can do. Ooh, look what this can do. So all my pieces and parts got happy this week. even with a lack of sleep. Donna, let's let people know about your genius here. And so that we can, I know it's that weird place of people are talking about me. So Donna is originally from New York, and she left her work behind at the world famous Math Institute at NYU to hitchhike around the world at age 26. She went on to find the quiet hills of Santa Fe, only to realize the hills were bilingual and she was not. So she flew across the ocean to Spain for an intensive 2-month Spanish immersion class. Well, 20 years later, she is still in Spain, checking off vocabulary lists in between dips in the sea with her water dog, Mocha. Donna is an author, podcast host, teacher trainer, creator of the award-nominated website Scaffolding Magic, travels the world giving talks and workshops to facilitate educators to create dynamic learning environments in which students develop agency and those skills that will make them viable in the future professional world. Woo!
Sounds so impressive, doesn't it? Sounds so interesting.
It sounds fun.
It's fun. It's been fun. It's been fun. You ask on your questionnaire whether it's a straight line where we have ended up now, or it's an octopus type thing, and I love that. And I thought, yeah, kind of octopus, all over the place, and that's what makes life interesting, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Well, tell us more. I don't know about you, but I know early on in my life, my professional life, or my late academic life, there was not an octopus. It was like, here's this straight line, right? That's kind of served up to us. But tell us more about like your octopus journey, and what inspired you to stay on the arms and not on the straight and narrow path.
Well, I don't think it was never a decision. And I think that's why it's been so squiggly. If it had been a decision, then it would have been a straight line because I would have known what I wanted, and there's always a way to get there. And what it was with me is, I think a lot of it has to do with I'm the third daughter. I have a younger brother, but I have two amazingly intelligent and powerful sisters. And so they did everything our parents wanted them to do, and I didn't have to do any of it. So I just sort of wandered, and I was an English literature major in college. And what do you do with that? There is no straight line for that, unless, of course, you want to be a professor in a university. And I had no interest in that. And I still don't. I work for universities, but I don't want to be a professor. And actually, Louise might understand this better than even I do. When you work in a university, you're not automatically a professor. You just work in a university. And I started calling myself a professor, and people corrected me. So that was very humbling. But to be a professor, you have to do a lot of work. You have to write a lot of articles, and you have to be friends and appreciate the right people. And it's a full-time job on top of a full-time job. So luckily, I never wanted to do that. And I just have kind of hopped from one thing to another, following my heart, which has been pretty scary at times, but very fulfilling most of the time. And now what I'm doing is, I'm skipping a lot, but what I'm doing now is coaching in schools and coaching in different parts of the world, which I find really satisfying. So you tell me how much you want me to go into different parts of it, but the straight line was never part of my path.
Do you feel like, so we talk a little bit here on the podcast, and I talk a lot about pivoting, right? And about, taking your experience from where you were and then using that to go someplace else that maybe you didn't think about before. Has there been a major pivot in your career that you kind of like were a little bit more intentional about going in a certain direction, or was it always just these tiny degrees of adjustment?
I think the biggest pivot, and the biggest pivot was leaving a teaching job and going off on my own. For me, all of a sudden I was a freelancer. In Spain, you call it autonomous. And so first I was working after college, I was working at the Math Institute, which was fascinating. And it was at the time computers were just coming out. And so I went from one law firm to another mostly, and I helped them either program or type documents. And I learned so much about the technological industry at that time. Then I realized that that wasn't very satisfying, and I was just working to pay the rent. And New York City, that's what you have to do, is pay the rent. Unless you have a lot of money, you don't enjoy being in the city as much as having to work to live there. So I said, I have to leave the city. And I literally hitchhiked around the world for a year, came back, worked for some Hollywood producers. That is just a whole world in itself. Unless you want to be very aggressive, you need to get out. So I got out and I went to New Mexico. And a lot of people move somewhere and find that that's where they're always meant to be. And that was my experience with Santa Fe. I found my people. I found my little corner of the world. I love Santa Fe. And I became a teacher there and never would have left, except that Santa Fe is a very special place. A lot of Hollywood people have their second and third home. And so the prices are skyrocketing. And I was a teacher trying to live on basically Manhattan type costs. And that wasn't very satisfying. And as I kind of said in this little blurb, I needed to learn Spanish. We had a lot of Mexicans there. It was part of the culture at the time to be bilingual. And I thought, oh, okay, I'll go to Spain for a month and learn Spanish and then come back. And that's not actually how most people learn a language. They need a little more time. And so after a month, I realized I had learned about 3 more words than I knew when I landed, and found a job. I was really, really lucky. I found a job at an American school here, and American schools are all over the world. And what normally you do is you spend 2 years in one school, then move to another country in American school and work there 2 years, et cetera, et cetera. And at the time, they would pay for us to move around. They would pay for most of the costs. I don't know if they still do that. But what I just realized also is that I was comfortable living in Spain. It worked for me. And I also didn't want to work at that school anymore. And so that's when, Louise, you asked what the big pivot was. I had to take a deep breath and say, I'm not really happy at this school, but it is paying all the bills and it is giving me residency. But I think I can make it without the school. And I did. I went back to school to get my doctorate because I love learning. And so as I was getting my doctorate, I gave private English classes, and I was fairly militant about it. I worked so hard, you cannot believe. I had no one else to depend on. There was no one else that was going to pay my bills. I was not going to tell my parents that I couldn't pay my bills. So I just worked as hard as I could. And kind of that's where I really carved my craft out, because I wasn't just going to be an English teacher and help them learn for tests. I wanted to know why they weren't learning. I wanted to know why they had fear around English. And I wanted to know why, especially teenagers, because I resonate most with high school students. Most people like the primary. I love high school students. I worked really hard to help them feel confident about themselves. So that's a lot of what my practice is now still.
So we took the title for today, Magical Frameworks, from the name of your business, right? Scaffolding Magic. When Louise and I work with our clients, and even in our own businesses, we usually create some sort of framework, some sort of scaffold for us to kind of move our way forward on. And so I'm curious how you started to develop that in working with the high schools. I have a high schooler. Louise has a high schooler. So I'm fascinated from a very personal perspective. I'm fascinated, like where you started to develop that in this process.
I think it probably began in New Mexico, because when I worked in New Mexico, I worked at a school that was in the middle of nowhere. It was next to the state prison, believe it or not. Mm-hmm. And so we had students whose parents were very, very anti-establishment, very angry. They were into all the things that kind of ended up a lot of the relatives in the state prison. So a lot of my students had parents and relatives there, and they weren't interested in school. And that was a huge surprise to me. And I'm going to answer your question, but it's a very roundabout way of answering it. I grew up in the Northeast in New York, and education was primary. I mean, it was the most important thing you could do. And I thought that's what everyone thought, that education is the way that you structure your future. And that had nothing to do with these students' reality. And so me being new and having a lot of energy, I thought, well, I'm going to just make them want to learn. So I thought you could at that time. And what I did is create activities. And what I did is I recorded books, and I found ways to help them like math and like English and like reading. And the activities were meant to sort of fool them into learning without even realizing. And so it began there. When I came to Spain, again, what I was saying is I had these high schoolers that were very intelligent, but were failing at English. And here in Spain, English is very, very important. In Europe, English is important all over the world. Maybe in 5 years, it'll be Chinese. We don't know. But I kept thinking, why are they failing English? They're intelligent. They're doing well on all other subjects. English is not very hard. It's the easiest language literally in the world to learn. And it was really about, you have to go into the psychology about it. If you're obligated to learn something, you really don't want to learn it, most of us. And they felt a huge pressure about this. And, it starts in preschool. I've done a lot of research on it. So if you start in preschool, quote unquote, failing at something, or someone tells you you're not good at something, or it permeates into your being. And so as they grow up, they keep failing the test because they know they have a feeling they're going to fail. So they do. And it snowballs. Mm-hmm. So by the time I got them, they just felt like failures. And what I did was just create games. And I created these activities, scaffolding activities that help them move forward. And some of the scaffolding activities were, in Spain, memorization is primary. You memorize, and you memorize more. And it permeates a lot of the culture, and that it's very, very regimented in a lot of ways. And with English, they had to memorize vocabulary and memorize conjugations and memorize sentences that meant nothing to them. If you go into a classroom and you're given something to learn and it has no relationship to yourself or your life or your interests, none of us really resonate with it, right? So what I try to do in the classes is not teach to their exams, but give them the tools, give them a platform so that they could eventually pass those exams without even realizing it. So that's where it came to. And I love that you both have teenagers now. I think your daughter is 14?
She'll be 14 in January, yeah.
Okay. And Louise, how old?
He'll be 18 in February.
Okay. I just happen to resonate with high school kids. I always tell teachers, it is their job to fight you. That is what they are meant. It's just that age. And they do it so well. I just start laughing because they do it so well. And I say, and your job is to just be the limit, just be the wall, be a soft wall so that they have something to bounce off of, and just let them be. And they do respond to that. Yeah. I'm not a mother. I haven't tried to do that with my own child because I don't have children, but it really works as a teacher.
Well, I mean, yeah, I can say firsthand because that soft wall is pretty amazing place. I tell my daughter all the time because she'll get really upset with herself for getting mad and for arguing with me. I'm a sensitive soul, so it's not surprising that I gave birth to a sensitive soul. And she gets very upset with herself when she starts yelling at me or being belligerent. And I'm like, it's okay. Like, if you can't practice that with me, who are you going to practice that with? So I may not like it, but this is kind of the job I signed up for, right? What you were sharing there, some of what was coming through for me in terms of the relevance outside of the teaching world, right? Daughter of educators, so I could go all in. I'm just talking about education all day. But to kind of pull this out for anybody that's listening, that's like, yeah, but how does that help me? There was one piece of it that idea of when we can't see how it's related to us, it's really hard for us to buy into it. And so I think of when I was an employee, and even when I'm working with my clients now, we need to feel that importance. We need to see the relevance for ourselves so we can make whatever progress we're making. So we can be connected to whatever project we're working on or whatever change and transformation we're working on. So that's one of those things that I think is so universal. And I find it fascinating from an educational lens to think about what a missed opportunity we have in education to start showing our students, our children, what buy-in looks like, and teaching them how to find that for themselves, even if it's not coming from our teachers.
Yes. And I think that you can take it outside of the classroom so easily by just using the term co-creation. If we co-create, we all feel that we're participating, we feel more valued, we feel seen, we feel heard. And yes, that needs to start in the classroom. It would be ideal if it could start in the family. A lot of parents don't know how to do that. They have taken sort of the model of their parents. And, my parents were very authoritarian. That was the type of parenting that happened then. In school, we had authoritarian teachers when I was growing up because that was the model. When I became a teacher, I thought, I don't know what I'm doing. What am I doing up in the board writing these things and having them think that I know more than they do? I know a little more, but it didn't feel comfortable. And so it didn't happen in the beginning, but now what I do is try to co-create as much as possible. And I'm not in the classroom. I now deal with teachers. So I'm a teacher trainer. Do I miss the classroom? A little bit. I loved having a classroom, but what I really love is having a wider influence, encouraging teachers now to co-create with the students. Because we are living in a world where they are exposed to so much more information than when I was a child, when you were children. And what I say to them also is that if you're telling them what to do all day, and if you're telling them what to know all day, then they leave the classroom thinking, I need to look for someone to tell me what to do and what to know. Mm-hmm. That is not going to save the world. And, Louise, you deal with pivoting. We need a big pivot on a global level.
Oh my gosh.
Absolutely. Well, and I hear that all the time from my clients too, who come so my pivoting clients who are looking for something new, or my leadership clients who are looking to, level up. It's like they come to me for these answers, and it's like, no, we are going to co-create, right? We are going to take a framework that I have, but this is you're the driver of your career and you're staying in the driver's seat. And so many people will be like, no, but I don't want to drive. I don't know how to drive. Right? Because we have this repeat pattern in all kinds of places in our lives where it's like we've been through an education system that tells us what we need to know and tells us what we need to do next. And we get to a point where it's like, co-create what? No. And it's like, oh yeah. And so a lot of my coaching is just around that, is getting people back in the driver's seat. Never mind figuring out what's next. Let's figure out how to stay empowered. Let's figure out how to be in control so that you actually can co-create now and again and again and again. And that's what I love when you talk about your scaffolding, right? And it's like, because where we are right now, no matter who we are or where we are, it's like, it is just a part of a scaffold. There is more that we get to learn and do and grow as we go. I love that.
Well, and isn't that the magic, right? Because you talk about, scaffolding magic, and we named this episode Magical Frameworks. The magic is that place of co-creation, is that place of empowerment for ourselves, for our clients, and I mean ourselves, I mean each of us as an individual within the world. The magic comes from that place of recognizing we don't have to have all the answers. If we don't have the buy-in, asking the questions, because you can create that co-creation yourself, even if it's not coming at you, right? Owning that and bringing that power back into ourselves and co-creating our lives. I mean, Louise, I think this is really what we talk about when we talk about crafting a career, is you're co-creating that, right? Even as an entrepreneur, we're co-creating it, because we can't just create a business and be like, this is what I'm putting in the world. I don't care what you want. You have to co-create it with your clients and your customers. That's what happens. So I think that's the magical part. I don't know. What do you think?
When I saw that you had named it Magical Frameworks, I thought, did I create that? Did I suggest that? That's very interesting. And I thought, I love magic. Listen, Behind me, I have this because publishers like me to talk in front of books. So I have these books here, and a lot of them are educational books. But on the other side are fairy tale books, because what did I do my doctorate on? Not education. Don't tell anybody, please. I did it. I did it on fairy tales. Fairy tales. I love fairy tales, and I go for the underlying message in fairy tales. So my doctor was actually on the witch is the heroine of fairy tales.
Yes.
And thank you, Kim. So the witch, it's a metaphor for any challenge you have in your life, anything, and I find that fascinating. So the magic, it came from the fairy tales, and scaffolding. Also, we really should define what a scaffold is, because a lot of people have different understandings of it. Scaffolding could be the scaffolds for a building that can, hold up the frame while you're filling in the middle. And then you take the scaffolds away and the building stands up by itself. Hopefully, that's the idea. For in education, you can have scaffolds which give you sort of support, either language support or conceptual support or imagery, visual support, so that you can move into new knowledge more easily. I use a different term that other people may resonate with a little more. I say giving a helping hand. So the activities are giving a helping hand to learners so that they can move into new knowledge more easily. And the magic comes from that they don't realize that they're learning, because hopefully it's fun for them. And what I do, and what I encourage other people to do, and you probably do it too in your own businesses, though you may not see it this way, is you do it through different learning styles. So it may be music for one person. It may be simply letting the child stand up and learn. It may be having them speak, listen, draw, anything that resonates with them. And so kind of the magic is for me to understand what resonates for them in learning, and for them to, when their eyes light up, they realize that they understand something they haven't understood in maybe years. That's magic. That is magic. So.
Oh, that's the yummy stuff. So for 10 years, I worked in a Montessori school on the administrative staff, and that's where our daughter started her educational career.
Excellent.
When we moved up to Montreal, she went into public school, and all of a sudden it was very different because the teaching style was different, and she wasn't having that magical place of co-creating with her teachers and with her peers. She's in an IB school, so there's a little bit more of that, but it's still very like authoritative top-down teaching. And it's been interesting to see her response to it. Unlike a typical American parent, I'm not like, go get those biggest grades. Like, that's not my ideal. Probably because of where we came from in her educational career, but also my understanding of, through my own life, kind of seeing how the educational systems have changed, particularly in North America. And so letting her say, this teacher, I'm not learning from this teacher. I'm like, okay, then you just do the best that you can. Like, if you don't get an A in the class, you don't get an A in the class.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get a B, you don't get a C, whatever it is. Like, we'll get you the support so you can pull the knowledge that you can, and understand that we don't all learn the same way, to the point that you just made. Like, we don't all learn the same way. We don't all respond the same way. We don't all show up in our work the same way. And so having that magical ability to understand who we are and how we need to show up, whether we're learning or working or being, gives us that. And oh my gosh, the fact that you did on fairy tales, that just like made my life. That's so exciting. I won't tell anybody though.
We are the best kept secret on the internet. So
excellent. No, I do have to say though, one of my sister's daughters was in the IB program, and I've tutored a couple of kids in the IB program, and it is really remarkable, because what it does is, even though it's within an authoritarian type of structure, it really promotes critical thinking, and that is more important than anything. And kudos to you, Kim, for not stressing the grade, because she's thinking anyway. She's developing more tracks in her mind, and that's the most important thing, in my opinion.
Thanks. And thank you. I appreciate that. And it's also, right, like, let's be real. They're 12, 13, 14, 17 years old. And there is that social emotional part of it that we tend to throw out the window, right? It's like we focus on the IQ instead of the EQ. And I'm like, part of that developmental phase is the EQ. And so we need to give them the space to experiment with that too.
Yes, and here's going to be a shameless sort of plug that
Cool.
one of my online courses is on the affective domain, and the affective domain is focusing on the emotional health of our students and really developing activities that help them feel safe in the learning environment, because otherwise their brain is not going to work as fluidly. So the affective domain is so critical. And there is one other thing I wanted to mention about I'm going to jump back to co-creation, if you don't mind,
Cool.
because I think this is a whole conversation in itself. Within the co-creation, I think it's also really important to promote as much as possible questioning. And I think that once we give permission to our students, our colleagues, whomever is surrounding us, permission to question our decisions, their own decisions, the decisions of other people around them, respectfully. It needs to be respectful. Then we've opened up a whole world of negotiation, which is incredibly valuable in this day and age.
So as a former attorney and who my partner in crime is a questioner by nature, you just spoke to both of our hearts.
Wow. Okay, great.
Yeah, I talk a lot with my clients about, understanding their superpowers, right? And really diving in and developing, like understanding like what it is that you're putting out into the world. And there are a lot of people like that curiosity is their superpower. And the way that we can step in and not just question what's going on, right? Like, or question authority or question, right? Like, not just that, but actually open the door up for other people by the questions that we ask, right? As coaches, we know there are powerful questions in the world that let someone move forward, that remove obstacles. And all we've done is ask a question. And I just think that there's so much power in curiosity that it starts not just to open doors for us, but it starts to open eyes. You talk about that like light bulb going off, right? And sometimes it's just people are answering a question that we've posed. And I just think absolutely, if we can become more curious in our culture, it opens up doors, but it also allows us to hear what other people are thinking and have to say. Our empathy, right? Our active listening, like, I don't know, just you name it. It all gets amplified by just stepping into that curiosity. I love that, Donna. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and not just the fact that we become more curious, but when we ask someone else a question, all of a sudden their world opens up because they feel more seen.
Yeah.
Hopefully we're asking them a question maybe in a way they've never been asked before. I believe there are lower order questions and higher order thinking questions. And the most powerful questions are how, why, and what if. And you may use these all the time and not realize how open they are. As teachers, we like to use the lower level questions because they're easier to ask and they're easier to evaluate. The higher level questions are open. There's no one direct answer, no one concrete answer. And so it's much more subjective. And that makes a lot of teachers nervous. But that's where, again, if we're going to go back to the magic, that's where the magic is. They can answer anything as long as they can justify it.
Yeah. Absolutely. I see that in leaders too. Leaders who are looking to level up their leadership, right? Turn those questions into those higher level questions.
Yeah.
100%.
I just had that conversation with one of my clients just the other day. I'm like, well, what kind of questions are you asking your team? Right. And the why tends to be like one of the places that people are really scared to ask, I've found.
Why is that?
They'll default to the how or the in terms of some of those higher level questions, they'll say how, right? Or when or where, because those they can throw in as well. But the why is scary. I find that they're really afraid to focus on why for themselves because the immediate response is, I don't know. When you ask people why things, it's like, well, I don't know. It just is.
Yeah.
Well, why? And as a leader, I think they're afraid because that is asking, that's opening up an opportunity to get more information, to get feedback that may not be so comfortable to hear. So I feel like that why is really hard for people. I don't know. You both looked surprised when I said that.
No, I'm not surprised at all, because as a leader, depending on what type of leader you are, unless you have meditated and are very sure of yourself, as long as if you know yourself, then it's easier to ask to get feedback, and then you can measure it against what you feel comfortable with about yourself. And if the answer pushes you a little bit out of your comfort zone, you'll be able to handle it. I think the problem comes with when a leader is so insecure about her or his positive points that they can't take any negatives. What does that resonate?
Yeah. Yeah. Do you see that in your clients, Louise?
Yeah, absolutely. I think too, those higher level, deeper questions, it means that we have to detach from the outcome. A lot of times we go and we approach a problem and we go, I know the solution, and I'm just going to ask people and I'm going to guide them to my solution. I'm going to take them from here. And we think we're co-creating. We're not. That's really you in the passenger seat yelling at your driver which way to go, right? And so when we ask these deeper level questions, we have to kind of give up a little bit of that attachment we have to the outcome and say, well, if we're going to be moving forward, how can I help the driver point their car in the right direction? And then let's see where we go. And that is very, very scary for a lot of people because we give up a little bit of control, but we have to detach from that outcome and let people drive their own cars, for crying out loud. Stop yelling from the passenger seat.
Yeah, I never sit in the passenger seat, so I don't even know how that feels anymore. But as a tangent on this, it's kind of interesting because I was thinking about my practice here in Spain, and I've been here for more than 20 years. And so most of my work is with the Spanish, although I go to other countries. And I go to the workshops and I present these scaffolding activities, and the teachers' eyes light up and they say, oh, I love this, but I'll never be able to use it. We have a curriculum, we have inspectors, blah, blah, blah. And I'm finally feeling that I'm being kind of worn down by the resistance. And that's not a good place to be. All it means is that I need to work more outside of the country. I'm still very happy here. But what it is a resistance, as you were saying, Louise, it's a resistance. And I see it as a resistance to freedom. They don't want to take the chance. They don't want to go somewhere where it's not secure. And the Spanish structure is very structured. And I've never been one to follow authority and follow rules. I see them as sort of guidelines. And if it doesn't make sense to me, then it doesn't make sense I'm not going to use it. But that's not how people operate here. And so as I say, I'm getting a little worn down by the resistance. When I work with American teachers, they're much more open. I work in Finland as well. I just came back from Finland. It's a very structured, a very closed mindset as well, and surprisingly.
That's so interesting because I would have let me check this. No, I mean, I can see how US teachers would be open to it for sure. I would be surprised in a lot of, and this is coming from being in Chicago, so CPS being Chicago Public School System, being a very large school system, that there's not a lot of wiggle room. There may be more than in other countries for sure. And I feel like this is that, like, I'd love to just talk with you ad nauseum about the educational system, because I feel like that's what we've done. And to pivot to our listeners, how this impacts them is we've also done that in the workplace. Like, we've created these structures, to go back to the frameworks or the scaffolding. We've created these structures. We societally have created these structures that don't allow us to feel like we do have any wiggle room, right? We're in these very rigid spaces that are not conducive to doing something outside of, quote unquote, outside the norm. When you're a rebel, right? You're flagged.
Yeah, and I would a little bit agree with that, and I'm going to a little bit disagree with that too, is because I think we carry a lot of that with us as well, and
Yes.
we get afraid to experiment. We get afraid to try something different because we've put so much pressure on it, or we're just going to follow this. So yes, a little bit, right? Culture top down, but also like there are things that like we can find places to experiment and explore and see, test those and see if they're limiting beliefs or not. So there was a yes and.
Well, yeah, and I'm going to push back again because oh,
Go
this
for it.
Libra going on here. And that when those limiting beliefs come from somewhere. And very often they come from because we've pushed that envelope or we've attempted to push that envelope and we've had our hands slapped. And I'm speaking from personal experience, right? As well as the experience of many of my clients is when we attempt to push, we get our hands slapped. We find that we can't move where we think we can move. We can't pivot where we think we can pivot. So there is always a way through. It may not be at the same organization, in the same role. It may not be right.
Right.
And we need to be able to take that courageous step. So that's kind of the yes and there as well for me. Go ahead, Donna. You're chomping at the bit.
You both were talking about leaders before, and I think this is the perfect place to come back to it, because when I'm coaching a whole school at the same time, what I need to begin with is by explaining to them that in the best practices, the leader of the school needs to be creating other leaders who are creating other leaders.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're saying you don't want to, if you're trying to do something innovative and you feel your hand is slapped, that's because a leader is feeling threatened. You're not feeling threatened as much as the person who is maybe your superior or maybe your client, either way. But when you are working in an atmosphere where you're feeling emotionally and professionally supported, that doesn't happen. You might have a structure, but it's more flexible, more malleable.
Yeah. And I think 100%. And I think having what we're going to be talking about next week, and I know that we've talked a lot about in other episodes, is right, understanding that internal piece of it, right? Understanding where we are and when something is misaligned. And so a misalignment can be that place of, oh, I can't be as innovative as I want to be here. This is not in a place that this is being accepted. So you can continue pushing because we need those people in the world. If that is in alignment with you, to keep pushing, or you can step out. You can find a way to do that, right? There's other myriad possibilities as well.
Yeah, so I think that's a question. And I would love to know how you both feel about this. When is it appropriate to stay and to sort of carve out your own individuality in a school, in a company, and in a business? And when is it time to leave? What's the key factor?
Good question.
$1 million question.
All righty.
Well, a $1 million answer would be, it depends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's.
I want the $2 million answer then, please.
I know. Well, we don't have enough time for that. No, the reality is it does depend, because it depends on what serves you as the individual. And so it comes back to that place of co-creation. So if you are in a role in a business, you've created a business yourself, that is in my opinion, not aligned with you. And so you're feeling like you need to be pushing, whether it's for innovation or for something else. If you're feeling that need to push, you need to identify if pushing is something that is motivational for you. Because that, to me, right, if you are motivated by and aligned with the idea of being that true rebel, of being that person who is pushing things forward, by all means do that. If that, however, is zapping your energy, zapping your strength, zapping your well-being, it's not. That's not a space for you. And it's going to be dependent on, so there were some roles for me that I was like, yeah, I can push here. This feels good and aligned, and I feel energized by pushing here. And there's other spaces, more spaces than not, that I'm like, that's not my role. And I had to come to terms with that, because I always wanted to be the person who was the like, yeah, let's go. And that's not always me. In fact, more often than not, it's not.
Yeah.
And so we're going to put a little twist. I'm sorry, Louise. I just want to say we're going to put a little twist on the word why, and you need to know what your why is to decide whether you stay or not.
Yeah, it goes back to your own purpose, your mission, your vision, your values, and who you are, understanding who you are. I think, right, as Kim was saying, like it comes out in, are you being drained by the action, or are you being energized by it? That all comes back to your values and to your whole purpose of why you do what you do. Maybe you are doing it to push, to make a difference, to not give up in that space. But maybe your mission is different, right? And maybe it means you pivot so that you can live your mission and live your purpose in a place that is ease, right? And feels really good. At the end of the day, right? It is about feeling good by the work that you're doing in the world, period, whatever that is. So that's that depends part. It depends on you and what your values are and what your whole why is in the big wide world. Why do you do what you do? And come back to that. So
I have a magical question. How did 46 minutes fly by like that?
No. Wow. Wow.
I know. We could continue this conversation for much longer, I feel, but we are in an effort to be a little have a little brevity. We're gonna
I just think Donna needs to be back on another episode, and we can talk about all kinds of things, like so many juicy bits in this episode today. So thank you, Donna. I love the conversation.
Well, let's get to those juicy bits. What are our golden nuggets? What are our takeaways from today?
Why?
Louise, you start, please. You start.
Why?
She did. Why?
That's my nugget. I mean, just reinforce that, right? Why? Why do we do what we do? Why? Right? Why is a question? Why? And that power of curiosity and really understanding what it is you can bring into the world when you are asking those deeper level questions, and that whole like, what is our why? And when we're grounded in that, it really does change the way we work at work, how we show up, the things we do, how we educate, right? How we all of those things. That why influences that how down the line. So that was my nugget. So thank you.
No, and I will say that my golden nugget is the deeper question, and I just appreciate so much both of you for not even spending any time on the superficiality of any of this, but going right to the deeper part and going right to the heart of whatever we've been talking about. And my golden nugget is taking the opportunity to explore something deeply. So I appreciate that.
Beautiful, beautiful. I actually have two today. One is the magic is in the co-creation, right? That landed really well for me. The magic is in the co-creation. And then the effective domain, right? When you started talking about that, we didn't dive deeply into it, but there is something there. And that's a thread I'm going to pull in terms of thinking about the psychological safety at work, but however we define work and what we need so that we can be effective. And so I'm going to pull that and do my own little deep dive on that separate and apart.
Thank you. Thank you. That's my passion right now, the effective domain. So yes.
Ooh, beautiful, beautiful. Donna, where can people connect with you out in the world if they want to understand a little bit more about the work that you do?
Well, thank you very much for asking. You can find me at scaffoldingmagic.com. Very easy. Thank you very much. That's so sweet of you. And there's just a plethora of ways you can interact and find activities and find me. And I'm the effective domain, the course on the effective domain. So yeah, please just write to me. You can find me there. So thanks.
Absolutely. I love it.
Louise, what do we have coming up next?
Coming up next week is Michelle on cultivating growth from within. It's going to be a fantastic episode. I love this topic too. I love all our topics. I love all our guests. We have a really great time diving into the deep and talking about things that matter. So I'm really looking forward to that. Same time. What is it? Same bat place, same bat phone.
Same bat channel. The bat phone doesn't. That channel. Okay,
but Louise, go for it. Yeah,
whatever. You can make it up however you want to do it.
What?
if people want to connect more deeply with us and have these deep conversations, how could they do that?
Absolutely. You can find us at yourkickasscareer.com. So go there. Please check us out. There's an opportunity for you to connect with us in your Kick-Ass Career Collective. Please check that out. It is about bringing humans together to change the way we work at work so that we are plugged in and connected with the things we do for a paycheck. Either in your entrepreneurial journeys or in your professional ones. We all have careers, so let's make them a kick-ass.
I always think it's funny. Entrepreneurial and professional, entrepreneurial and job are different things. I'm like,
They're not.
They're not.
I'm just trying to cover all the bases.
I am here to change that message. Yes, it is a fabulous place with fabulous people coming together as we are crafting our own kick-ass careers in the world, whatever that looks like for yourself. So we would love to see you there. We've already talked about what we're doing next week. Donna, stay warm.
Yeah, that's easy during the day. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, thank you. Both of you too. That's more relevant for both of you.
That's just rude at this point.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you both so much.
Thank you, Donna. Take care, everyone. Thanks for tuning in today.
See you next week. Bye for now.
Bye for now.